Okay, so we are starting now. If you can't hear me or if there is a problem, do let me know. Okay, and really sorry for the streaming issue that we faced. We were actually trying to present the streaming and Zoom together. For some reason we faced an issue with that. Maybe we can try and identify the issue and get it fixed for the next round. Uh, but good. We are live right now. Uh, and we can start the session. Can you all see the stream? Actually, this was actually we were actually expecting this to be a, pairing session, live pairing session, uh, but looks like that's not going to happen. But anyways, we can start. Unfortunately, you won't be able to hear the voice of my pair, Mr. Rajesh Pitti, who's currently pairing with me remotely. We are on two different locations. But I'll try to talk the messages which is sending me. Um, really sorry for that. Uh, so what we are trying to do over here is we had this Flutter application which let me currently start. Uh, Let me actually present the Flutter application to you all first. So let me start running the code. It's building. I'm waiting for it to build. I'll quickly introduce the application. I'll walk everyone through the code, and together while we are at it, we would try to do TDD. We will try to improve on some features on it and try and make it better. We'll continue developing the flow over it. This entire repository will be made public post this talk, so it would be open for anybody to review and give feedback on. So what is the purpose? Just to give an introduction of this session, this is not exactly a Flutter session. This is so in that sense, it is not going to introduce what Flutter is, what widgets are, why you should use Flutter, why you should not use Flutter. It's not of that. It's We are assuming that you all are having a sorry. So we are assuming that you all know about what Flutter is and might have worked on that. And we are in this particular session we are going to develop this application through TDD. Right, so how TDD looks like in Flutter, that's going to be the point. TDD, continuous integration, pairing. Unfortunately, pairing is something we won't be able to give you an experience today, but at least the two remaining areas we can try. You should be able to see the screen. Cool. So with that, my application has loaded, and let me actually show you the application. Right. So here you go. Can you all see the application now? In this is a pretty simple application. There is currently a login window where you need to enter username and password. After that, you need to press login. It will take you to a screen where you can enter all your to-dos, and you will be able to see the to-do list on your screen. Right now it is not talking to any API. It is just currently running on the local system. We are trying to simulate an API, but it is not connecting to any server beyond this machine. So the way I have configured this right now is, let's say if I try to directly click on login, it says, you know, username needs to be entered, which is good enough. Let me enter some username. The password is something for which I have not yet put on a field, but let me enter a password as expected, and I say login, and it takes me to this screen. So what you see over here is you see a login, the progress loader over here, and then there is a field over here and an add button. In the field, if I try and enter a text or my to do message and press on the add button, it should appear in the list below. So let's give it a try. Remember to fix the tech issues earlier. So that's a message for me. So some things are in our hands, some things are not, but let's try our best. So if I say add, it should appear in the list below. Yep, as we can see. Well, one issue you can directly see over here is that it once it gets added below, the text does not disappear from the text field. We can keep that as one of our consideration, which we need to fix as part of this session, apart from integrating it with the. So what's next? Let me remove this, and let's add another one. Start with TDD. So add, and yes, the message appears over here. This list is having certain features. As you can see, the header does collapse to a bit, and the list scrolls under it. If I try to pull refresh it, you can see a loader for some time, and it will try and pull the latest to-dos or any messages which were there before I added, because it's quite possible I can add to-dos from two different machines, and I can definitely swipe it up, and it will try to refresh in this screen. As of now, as you can see, this is not connected to the internet. This does not work on the internet. The way it works is, let me actually show you the IDE. The way it works is, in my IDE or in my code, I have implemented a mock API client myself, and it acts as a data store, or it basically mocks the whole service for me. So you can see that there is a collection list which holds the to-do collection internally, and depending on the various post and get requests, it try to return me the appropriate result as expected by the my application. And that's how it works. As far as possible, or rather we can say almost an entire code is covered with a test, and we will shortly see about that. So as you can see, all the tests are here. There is a route measure test, there is a mock to do API client which is being used in the test here. There is a login widget test, and this is the login widget test. Let me quickly run this test to give you all an idea. So as you can see, it's running a test right now, and the test should pass. We would also try and see what the coverage looks like. I'm not big fan of a coverage. You should not be writing tests, or you should not be doing TDD to increase the coverage, but to ensure that you have an adequate cover for any possible refactoring that you may have to do. Yes, so all the tests are passing. So what type of tests do we have? So we have a test that says that the screen should have a field for username, the screen should have a field for password, it should have a login button. And the reason why this test exists is because I was trying to test drive the UI as well in this case. So first I wrote a test for having a username field. I got it to pass. Then I wrote another test for having a password field. I got it to pass by making the required changes in the widget. And finally, after writing the UI type of tests, I started mocking out different behavior and testing out whether the flow works fine. Am I still audible? Cool. So, yep. So going back, so the next test says that it should navigate to the to-do screen on successful login with the client having auth header and a username for create parameters. Well, this is like a long description of the test, but I'm trying to write the title as descriptive as possible. It should not navigate to the to-do screen if the login is not successful. So that's this test that you see over here. And it's pretty simple. I'm trying to simulate an error during an API call for the auth request, and if it returns an error, the screen should not change. The other test is pretty simple. I'm trying to simulate a success. So the way it works is I'm having an auth request, which if it works, it will give me a JWT token in the authorization header, which I'm trying to use for all the subsequent requests, which I have simulated in this case. I'm adding few more parameters that will be used in the subsequent requests, and towards the end I'm checking if instead of login widget, the screen now has to do widget with it. So that's instead of login widget, the screen now has to do widget with it. So that's primarily the structure. Please try and forward any questions that you have. We would really like to answer those questions, as this is actually supposed to be an interactive session. Unfortunately, I cannot hear your voice, but do try and put your questions in the chat window and we would try to answer that. So this is how the code looks like currently. Similarly, there is a to-do widget test, and another thing you might notice is if I go to UI, if I go to there is a section over here or a package over here called as a UI, and which you don't see over here. So I have various other smaller components that I have implemented in the app, and this is being used by the app. So you have a area under the position column. You have an elevated curved rectangle container, the one that you see for the login as well as the to-do form. Then there is a nested header in the list. This is used on the to-do form. Then there is a pull to refresh list, which we are using for showing the to-do collection. There is a rounded button, and then there is a rounded text field. But you do not literally see a test for those over here, and we still say that we have 100% test coverage. How is that possible? And the primary reason why they don't have the test is because I didn't literally plan for having these classes. These widgets and these classes got created as part of the refactoring. So I literally started writing everything in one class while expressing my test for it. And as the class was growing bigger and bigger, or I was trying to see whether this component can have some other uses or not, or whether the final details of the component, like for example, let's look at a rounded button. when we are trying to use it in our widget or the main widget that we are trying to use, where there is going to be some feature around it, the reader of that class or reader of that widget need not literally know what we are trying to do to achieve a rounded button, right? So to keep the code simple, I started extracting various widgets out, and all of these widgets were already covered as part of the tests written for the main widgets that you see over here. Like for example, there is a login widget and then there is a to-do widget. As they were already covered in the test and as they were created as part of the refactoring, I didn't go ahead and write a separate set of tests for those. And that's also another point to remember, is you do not start TDD by having an upfront design in mind. It doesn't work that way. So if you are really driving TDD with an upfront design in mind, that I need to have a controller, I need to have a repository, I am going to have this as a model, that's not literally an idea of a TDD. Even though you might have written your tests first, but that's not the expectation of the TDD as a practice. What you are expected to do is you are expected to write the smallest possible test case that you can, that can be as meaningful as possible. Write a code for that. Keep writing more tests to describe extra behavior, and as you write those tests, you write the subsequent code to make the test pass. And in this process, if the code gets too complex, if there is going to be a lot of repetition in the code, you end up refactoring them first into different set of methods and eventually grouping the methods in the class, etc. And that's how you go about it. Now, one thing you might see in the code over here is there are no what is called as data classes, right? There are no classes which are just properties, which contain just properties. Like for example, there is no to-do class as such, right? Which just holds the message and the date of it, etc. There is a to-do item, and the to-do item itself holds its title and any other message that it needs to hold, and also to render. The idea behind that is we are also trying to follow a practice called as tell don't task. So if you are trying to create a data class, you would be actually asking another object. So now your object actually behaves like it is a data structure, right? That's not what an object is. An object is not a data structure. Object is essentially an entity that is a behavior. What data it holds, the reason why that entity holds the data is so that it can give an appropriate behavior to you. But it does not hold the data, so you can look at that data and implement something. One of the so if you are really driving your design by a test first approach through TDD, one thing you would generally end up doing, or one thing you would generally notice, is your code would also not, your project would also not end up having data classes. And that's because there is absolutely no point, because you are not going to write a test case like it should have a title field. That's not a test case, right? You are probably going to say something like it should output to a JSON that looks like this, and that is going to be your behavior. Now it may generate those fields randomly if required, or it may already hold those fields like title, description, etc., whatever is required by the JSON. But definitely you are not writing tests for those properties. You are writing a test for the behavior, right? You are writing those methods, you are writing those functions. And as you continue extracting functions, as you continue grouping them into a bigger classes, there is no place for data classes over there. So this is one thing you might notice if you are really not trying to design your application in advance, and if you are really trying to follow a test-driven approach for your development, where you write tests, smaller tests, write the code to make it pass, refactor as you go along, one thing you would definitely notice is you would not have any data classes, and that's one of the best practice also. So and the best part you can see, right, is even though I have all these different classes, created for the simplicity and readability, I do not really have much tests, but essentially everything is still covered under the tests, right? So how should we go about? Is this clear enough? Any questions up till here? So I'm expecting that there is going to be a lag before I start getting any replies. But if you have any queries around what I have said till now, please do post them in the questions on the chat. So moving ahead, let's try and fix something. But before doing anything, right, before we implement anything, let's try and actually integrate this with the backend. The way we did this together, I won't say this is exactly a best practice, but we were trying to do this in our free time. Rajesh is also working on another project. I am also working on another project, and we were trying to build this whenever we were getting time. So the way we did this was we agreed to a contract with an API, and Rajesh tried to implement the API on his end. I tried to implement the service on my side. I tried to implement the application on my side by writing the mocks for all the tests. And what we are going to do now is I would try and point this application to the real server and see how whether the application works fine or not. Well, looks like we do have a question. Okay, this is a good point, good question actually from Divya. In TDD, how can we write the tests first without writing the code? Pretty good question, and that's what we are going to see in some time. Well, there is the whole process. Actually, I should not probably talk a theory around it. Why don't we just see this happening live? But before we do that, let me go to the main class over here, main file, and let me see. Yeah, you can see the screen, right? So I would go over here, and what I would try to do is I would try and replace this mock to-do API client with a real client. And I already have a real client developed over here, and this is the code for it. And also there is a test for it. As you can see, this test was actually written before I wrote the client. So let's try and use this client in place. And what do I need to be able to do that is I'll initialize the object. I need to import the package, HTTP package, sorry, yep, just namespace it so it does not interfere with other clients that I have written, client. And we also need to pass the base path for it. So what is happening over here is the API is actually hosted on Rajesh's system. It is not actually developed on a publicly available server. But what Rajesh has done is he has written it on his machine, and he has published the endpoint publicly through a service called as ngrok. And I need to specify that path over here. Yep. So if everything goes fine, nothing should break. It's saying it is trying to reload it. Let's see. Well, this is not exactly what we expected to happen. Let me actually start the app from scratch. Meanwhile, let me just ask Rajesh to check on his end whether the service is really running. Yep, it's running the Xcode build. And one way to really test whether we have, so obviously since we are actually connecting to the API, the authentication and everything should work fine. But one interesting way to really make sure that we have really connected to an endpoint beyond our machine is we will start the application again, and it should hold the data for us. All our previous to-dos should appear to us. So the application has been loaded right now. Let's go and let's start. So I would say test again. I'll enter a password, login. Now we need to wait because it is actually going to make a real call, and if everything goes fine, it should take us to the next page. Let me check whether the app has really started. Rajesh, are you seeing the response on your end? Cool. I think the API was not exposed properly to ngrok. So if this is done, we can try going ahead. Login. Well, I wonder actually if the system has really connected. So let me try again now. Try now. Yep. Thanks, Rajesh. Thanks for enabling the requests. So as you can see, I have connected, and I should be able to enter the data. And what I will do is I'll try to restart the same app again, and it should show me all my previous messages. So how would that work? Let's try. This is the first to do. Yep, and say add. Yes, this is the first to do. Then I would say this is the second to do. Yes, and it's there. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually put this application in the background. I'll also have to kill it. So yeah, sorry. And I'll start this again. And again, it is going to ask me for login. And what should happen is as I log in, I should see the previously added to-dos back again. Test. Okay, cross fingers. And there you go. It actually connected to the real live service, and it started persisting my to-dos. It also started pulling the latest to-dos for me to use, right, for me to refer. Let's add some more, and we can test pull to refresh feature as well. So how should we go about doing that? So let's start. I'm going to say, so So everything would now go in a reverse order, right? So I will first add 1, then I'll add 2, then 3, then 4, 5, 6. So you see, there's one aspect that I really don't like over here, and that aspect is the fact that I have to clear this text again and again after adding the to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to implement that feature now, or rather, let's fix that issue now. What I'm going to do is I'll first write the test. So if you are wondering how the tests are written first before I implement any of this, so let's take a look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the to do widget test, and we have this feature over here, right? It should add the given to do to list, and that's for your text. That's what we are testing over here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to just copy this test for us, and I'm going to say it should clear the text field. It should clear the text field, or rather, it should clear the to do field. It should clear the to do field, to do input field after the to do has been added to the list. So this looks good to me, and we are having a mock to do API client over here. We are trying to say, enter the text as my to do, and we are trying to click on the button. Over here, what we are trying to do is we are actually trying to see that the text for my to do is visible in the pull to refresh list. But how are we now going to verify that this particular text is only going to appear in the list but not in my input field? And it's pretty easy actually. All I'm going to do is I'm going to say expect find.text, and it's my to do. That's the text I entered for my to do, and I'm going to say it should find only one instance of it, finds one widget, right? So if I am really clearing the value from my input field, then it should find only one to do entry or the to do text, and that should be in the widget. So let's give that a try, and the way it's going to work is I'm going to run this. And it should fail. I expect it to fail, yes, and it should fail for the right reason. The reason why it should have failed was that I was expecting only one widget to exist with the text in it, but what it is telling me is it is now having two widgets with the same text, and that's because I am not clearing the text field. So let's go and fix that part, right? So we are trying to get this test to pass now. So I'm going to go to to do widget, and what am I trying to do over here in the to do widget? Sorry, yeah, in the to do widget I am having a to do form, so I'll need to do something at the to do form. What it is trying to do is, as I press the button, it is actually as I press the button, it is trying to say, it is actually asking the provider to add the to do. So this could be something pretty simple to do. I'll just put this in the bracket, and I would issue two requests one after the other, right? So this should be good enough for us, right? All I need to do is I just need to clear the text. So I will use controller dot text and I'm going to say empty, right? And I can go back to my test and I can say run. Yeah, and the test passed. So if this is true, we should actually see this happening with the app. Let's go inside in the app, and if this doesn't work, we'll restart the application. So going further, you should see the app now, and let me try adding this 6, right? Well, 6 got added twice, so looks like the hot refresh didn't work. Yeah, it obviously didn't work. Let me restart the application. Put this in the background. Let me just run the application again. And let's wait till it loads. Meanwhile, do send your questions in the chat window. Okay, so app is starting. Let's go back to the app. Let's enter the same username and let's log in as the same user. Yep, 7, 6, 6 was added twice, right? So let's enter 8. Yeah, and it went from here. Yeah, and it appeared over here. But this doesn't seem right, isn't it? Why it doesn't seem right? Can anybody tell me why it doesn't seem right? Uh, any response in the chat? Take a look at what happened. So I'll enter 9. I'll say add. Do you see a reason why this doesn't seem right? Well, one particular reason I don't see it right is because the text field clears before it has actually been added to the widget. Did you notice that? And that's happening because of the way we have written the code. Let's go back to the code. And how have we written the code? All we are trying to do over here in the to-do widget, in the to-do form, is we are making the request to add to-do, and as soon as the request is made, we are simply clearing the text, right? This is where the problem lies. This is what should not happen, right? After saying add to-do, it should clear the field only when it is returned with the correct output, right? That it has gone successful. So let's try and implement that flow. How would we do that? We are trying to say that when this works, when add to do is called, so we need the best way to simulate this flow, right? Is if the add to do is called and if the to do has not got added, If the to do does not get added to the list, then we do not clear it. Is that right? So let's see how this add to do is working. It's simply a interface which is then implemented by to do collection state, and it it tries to do this stuff over here, and item added is a void function. Yeah, exactly. So we can use, but the main thing over here is we need to write a test for it. I might need to actually change my location because I'll need to uh, connect the laptop to charger. So you might need to I might need to pause this for a bit. But anyways, we'll be talking as we go, so that's definitely not an issue. All I'm just trying to do is I'm just trying to change the place where I'm developing this. Sorry. So I'm at a place where I should get access to the network, or not network exactly. Yes. Cool. Do we have the stream now? Is everybody able to hear me? So this should be good. Yeah. Let me switch back. Hey, I'm back again. So let's write a test for it. The most important thing is writing a test for it. I don't want to write the code, then go and check in the app whether that is happening or not. I want to do it while writing a test, right? And writing a test has another purpose. Is take a look at this, right? You are anyways coding. Your hand is on the code, right? You are inside the IDE. Why not just write a test itself as a code? So you stay in the same set of mind, and it is also giving you a cover. You can continue refactoring your code as and when you go along. And this is a perfect example. I didn't, while writing the test, if you see, right, I didn't think of the fact that this particular method had to give a reply back whether to do has been added successfully or not, because this particular condition has not arrived to me as yet, right? That is also called as a Yagni principle. It's called you aren't gonna need it. So you don't write the code till you actually feel the need for it. But as I am going to refactor this, I know that I am actually covered by my test cases, right? So let's do this quickly. What I need to, the test that I need to write is it should not clear the text field if add to do fails. So let's go back to the test, and I am going to write it over here, right? It should not clear the to do input field if it has not been added to the text field. Is that right? It should not clear the input field if to do has not been added to the text field. Now, how is this working? How are we trying to simulate the success criteria over here? So I have this mock to do client, which if we see is using the create method call over here, as you can see, and it is and this is the one that is trying to return me a success and everything. What I am going to do now is, what if this create method fails? Right? If this create method fails, then I sort of get what I need to do, and that is going to work because in the to do collection, if you see, if the state from this add to do as well, I would now need to return my response back. So let's quickly, but before we do that, right, let's try and simulate it through the test. I need to make sure that my API client is failing over here, and I have my mock client here, mock to do API client. All I need to do is this create method. I need to throw an error no matter what. I'm going to override this method. So let's quickly do that. Widget test. I'm over here. I'm just going to say class to do API client, to do API client to fail the create to do, and this does nothing, but it simply extends the mock to do API client. Yep. And once this is done, create constructor to call the super, and that's done, and this is going to be dynamic as expected, and I just need to override a method. Well, that's weird. I think that's probably the IDE issue, but what I need to do is I need to override this method, right? And I don't need this collection. All I need to do is, no matter what, just throw an exception, throw an error, right? Cool. So if this happens, then the to do should not get added. So this is a long test actually, because literally the field is trying to do a lot of things. It should not clear. So all I need to do is I need to give this value over here. To do API client to fail the create to do. And when this happens, well, what do you think will happen? The test would still pass, right? The test would still pass. Or if it doesn't pass, we have to make sure that it doesn't pass for the right reason. And the error was the number 400 was thrown running a test, right? So a future threw an error, where that was a good thing, but nobody sort of captured that error, and this is a good thing. But if I just have to fix this test, right, the simplest thing that I can do to literally fix this test is go to the repository, to do repository, and then I can just say dot catch error, right? That's it. And the test should still, now the test should pass. Everything would behave exactly the way it should have behaved. Okay, exactly one matching node in the tree, text finder. Oh yeah, so now what happened was exactly one matching node in the tree, but it actually found 0 widgets with the text my to do ignoring widget offset. Well, why did that happen? That happened because so this is actually correct. It failed, right? The only problem is, the reason why I consider this test to be wrong is we still don't know if the to do still appears in the text, isn't it? We have to make sure that the to do appears, but my to do appears, but it does not appear inside the pull to refresh list. So we'll make the test complete first before we actually go and fix it, right? So even if it is failing, we have to make sure that the test is still right, right? We should not do this as a procedure. The TDD should not be used as a procedure that, as far as it is failing, I'm just going to go and write the code. I have to make sure that my test is absolutely failing for the right reason. Well, in this case, the to-do didn't get added. That is fine, but I could just go and also try and fix this and remove this widget over there, but this doesn't feel right at this moment. What if it is still getting added to the list? So let's go and try and fix this. How would we ensure that? We have to make sure that it does not appear, right? We need something like this. So in this test, we have to make sure that the my to do is still visible, but it is not visible here as a child of a pull to refresh list, and it should be finds nothing. So let me run this. I'm still audible, right? Yay. So this literally failed, and I have a guarantee that to do is now going off, but it is also not going to appear in the to do list. Let's go and fix this. For fixing this, I need to do one more step over here. Sorry. What happened over here? So I need to go to to-do collection. Yep. I need to change this a bit. Now this has to return a future, right? Future of what? I can say just a future of void. That's good enough for me, right? I don't see a reason why this should not be the case. So what all I'm going to do is this should also return a future of void. And that's it. The only impact is I need to return this. Yeah. So my test would still be failing. Let's go and verify that my test is still failing. And once this is actually implemented, the better thing to do is I should be running all my tests as well. Yes, the test is failing. Let's quickly go ahead and fix it. Let's go to do form. Yeah, we are here. We are saying add to do. If this returns successfully, only then we will clear it, right? So dot then, well, I don't care what the value is. It's definitely going to be empty. Only thing is I'm going to move this code here. Yeah, that makes sense. What do you think? Is this going to make the test pass? If it does, well and good. Let's see. But it's still failing. And the reason why it is failing, this is like the perfect example of why we need to do TDD. I didn't even have to go to run my application again and follow all the steps. I quickly got the response that my code is not working within 2 seconds. And the reason why it is not working is if you go and try to see in add to do what we have done is we are catching the error, right? The error unfortunately is not getting passed back to the consumer, which is supposed to be over here. Now this is a void method, so we can literally catch the error over here, and that should solve our problem. Right now we are not talking about displaying any error, but let's see. If everything works fine, now the test should pass. Yes, and my test is passing. Let's quickly run all the tests. Okay, cross fingers, cross fingers, cross fingers. Yes, I have 33 tests now, and take a look at how long it took. It just took 12 seconds for the for Flutter to validate that my application is working completely fine. Right? Why don't we just now start this application and try and see how long it actually takes how long it actually takes to test this application without having a test. So let's wait till it launches the app. And I'm still waiting. Is anybody keeping a counter on the time? Are we beyond 12 seconds already? And keep in mind, I actually fixed this without even having to look at the app, whether it is clearing the text field or not. But sorry. But I'm pretty confident at the moment that it is just going to work fine in the app. I don't need to do this test for sure. Yep, came over here, 10, let's say 11, and it should disappear only when it gets added in the text in the list below. So let's wait. There you go. Did you see it just didn't disappear quickly enough? 11, 12. Yeah. And there's some gap between the rendering issue. I'm not sure whether this issue is going to be visible in the on the devices as well, or it is because of this being a simulator. But we can definitely connect a real device to it and give it a try. So we already have 13 items added over here, right? Let's add one more, 14. And we can try and see whether the how the pull to refresh is working. So as I scroll below, sorry, not pull to refresh, the infinite scroll should also work fine. Yeah, 2, it should load one more. There you go. 1, and all the previous to do should also be there. This is the first to do. So yes, the infinite scrolling works fine. What about pull to refresh? Is there a way we can really test pull to refresh? Now you will see the real challenge, right? Of how much manual effort it takes to really test it. So to test this on a device, I know it is working. I know the pull to refresh is working because I have the test for it over here, and you can. Oh, sorry. Let me run this again. Yep. Let me run the application again for you to see. Sorry, Amit. I'll start the application again. Okay, not an issue. So I'll kill this, and I'll start the application. So the application has been started. You can see the application, right? Let me just do this test login, and there you go. This is the list. Let me add 15th element, 15, and it does not directly disappear, but it disappears only when the item is about to appear in the list below. Similarly, let's try 16. Yep, there you go. 17, there. So it just directly doesn't disappear. It disappears only when the to do has been added and it has refreshed in the list below. Going forward, and the other part that we test the infinite scroll, right? So 6, it should refresh now. Yeah, 6, and it has now loaded the previous items. It still has items to load, and there you go. So we have just tested the infinite scroll as well. But how did I actually go about writing the code this way? No, you would actually see that I have written the I have written the test. All of these individual features get tested in 12 seconds every time I make a change to the code. So that's something really, really useful. It should refresh on pull down for newly added items. Now, here is a question, right? Let's say if you are testing it, and in this particular case, you would generally see that all the items, as soon as I add them, let me say 18, all the items directly appear. So to really, really simulate the pull to refresh feature, I somehow now need to go and add those items without using this app, and then do a pull to refresh thing and see whether those items appear or not. And now we would talk about Postman, we might talk about having a separate device, another device, and all those stuff. Well, we'll actually do that. But this test exactly verifies that. If you see the way it starts with an existing list of items, right? We then start it. Then what I do is I do not go to the API, only in the mock collection that I am using, right? One more item, right? I execute pull to refresh over here using the drag test, pump and settle, and then just verify that to do 10, which was just added, has appeared in the list. And that's it, right? How long does it take for me to test this? It would be definitely like less than something like 2 seconds or less than 12 seconds for sure. But it is testing this entire flow for me. Let's actually run this on a real test. Let me see if I can do that. Let me actually run the code on the real device as well. So, yep, it's connected. I'm going to say view. Yeah. So I'll keep both the items side by side. Let me. Do you see this? So on one end I have the simulator, on the other hand it's a real device. I am going to start the application on the real device now. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some to do items on this other device, on the real device, and I'm going to do a pull to refresh on the simulator. And let's see whether that really works fine or not. But I should be pretty confident that it is working fine because my test is working fine. Yep, let's wait till it loads. But how long did it take? It actually took 2 seconds, 272 milliseconds to test the pull to refresh flow from a unit test. So let's wait. Let's wait for the app to start. Looks like it's going to take some bit of time to actually do the Android build. Or while that is happening, I'll also quickly, or I think it is done. No, it's I think still doing it. So what I could do is while this is running, let me actually walk you through the CI which we are using over here. So this is how it looks. We are using Bitrise for this purpose. Essentially, you can use anything that you want to use. Just that Bitrise makes it a bit easy. I haven't tried, but it's definitely possible. If you're using Fastlane, then you can You can even build it using GitHub Actions. Possibly I'm going to try that out next. And this is the project. And let's take a look at the workflow before we actually see how this is working. Okay, so while it has happened, the apps have actually loaded on the device. Let me actually share the, yep. So can you all see it? So what I'm going to do is I'm actually, or no, isn't it visible? Okay, cool. Yeah. So let me enter. I'm trying to log on the application which is now loaded on the real device, and there you go. What I'm going to do now is I see the same set of items like 18 and 18, right? 20, yeah, 21. So cool. So we have added so now on the real device you see that we have added 21, 20 and 19, right? Three more items after what we see on the simulator. Let me do a pull to refresh on the simulator. And if everything works fine, there you go, right? We see 21, 20, well, like one item, there could be some issue or it, but no. Actually, there were 21, 20. I think I've 21, 20, 21, 20, 19. Yeah, it's right. It's right. Sorry, my bad. So we got the pull to refresh working as well. Should we try it on the other side quickly? So I'll say 22 here, 23 here on the simulator, and I'm going to go back and to do a pull to refresh. Yeah, there you go. It works, right? So yeah, so we were talking about CI/CD for this purpose. Let's go to that. Yeah, so this is the CI which we have in place, and what it is going to do is, okay, let me just do a hard refresh for it. Yeah, there are no scheduled builds as of now. All the previous builds have gone successful, and you can see what it tries to do. So let's go down. So there are a lot of logs over here, but you can literally see that it is trying to deploy to Bitrise, trying to take some cache. These are all the steps. It did a git clone. It loaded all the certificates. It installed Flutter. It loaded the previous cache. Then finally it ran the test. It created a build. It created a Xcode archive, so I can have a releasable IPA. It deployed to Bitrise, which is what you see here. And when this happens, I also end up getting an email. So let me literally show you on the device of how I get an email. Give me a time, give me some time. So let me go back and yeah. Do you see on my device I've opened my email and I see a email for the first version of Todo application saying it is ready to install. One of them is an Android application. You can see over here app release APK, right? And the other one is for the IPA, that is for iPhone. So I can literally download this and test it through so essentially I can send an email to an entire team, all the stakeholders, clients, that this is the email. So this is the email. Please download the application whenever you want. Give it a test and try to give me feedback. And this is going to happen for every commit. Why don't we give that a try now? So since we added two this talk, we actually three, we integrated it with an API, and that worked. Hooray! The second thing that we did was we fixed the issue. Yeah, actually two things. We fixed the issue with the where the to do text was not disappearing even after successfully adding it, and around that we also fixed one bug. So let's quickly go and let's commit this. I am going to quickly let me use a terminal for doing this, right? So I see some files which I can just add, and I can say so integrated with live API and ensure that to do text is cleared from text field on successfully adding the to do to the list. Yep. So added my message, and I will say git push. Okay, I have pushed it to the repository. As soon as it's pushed, you should see that the build is now running on the browser. Let's go and check the builds, whether it has started a new build. Yeah, it has triggered a new build, and you can see it is auto triggered. It is the last message is integrated with live API and ensure that to do text is clear from the text field, the one that I typed before committing it. And you can open it and see its logs, what it is trying to do. And it's trying to pull a cache now. Once it has pulled it, it's going to install Flutter. It's going to build the Android version. It's going to build the iOS version at the same time. The test is we have 100% coverage. Well, let's take a look. What we are going to do is let's go back to the Android Studio. Yeah. Any idea how we find the coverage? Unfortunately, doesn't work off the shelf from Android Studio. So I'm going to say Flutter test. Do take a look at the command I'm typing below. Okay, Flutter test coverage. Divya, can you describe your question a bit? Are you talking about the Bitrise, or are you talking about any other tool? If you are talking about the CI, it is Bitrise. This is Bitrise. If you think I have not answered it, then please let me know. So yes, it has now actually executed it with the coverage, but what it tries to do is, let me go over here. It creates line coverage info file. Now, what I need to do in order to run this is I'm using a tool. Sorry. using a tool called as Gen HTML. Let's give it a try. Yeah, Gen HTML, and let's find its parameters. So yes, we need to definitely create an HTML file for the coverage data file in the info file. May also be a list of coverage. So what we need to do over here is we need to, the structure for this is option and the info files. So let's do it quickly. Gen HTML, and we need to say output it inside the coverage folder only, and the file is coverage slash, sorry, yep, and all of this will get dumped inside the, it will create an HTML file out of it, and it will dump it inside the coverage folder only, because it is going to do that because I specified it as the output directory. So let's just quickly load this, and looks like it is not going to auto load it. Let me do that. Yeah, coverage, and I am going to open index.html. Do you see it? Wait. Yeah, you should be able to see the code coverage now. Do you see it? So what it is trying to say? It is trying to say that I currently have 100% line coverage, as you can see. It did 298 hits for all the 298 lines. And let's go and check. So if I go to to do, for example, I just change something in the to do collection. It can see, you know, all the hits that it did. We can see that it has actually literally covered the areas that we covered the code that we added today. We can go to to-do form, and we can see it has handled that as well. So we are all covered. Yeah, cool. So we have 100% test coverage over here. Well, as I said before, having an 100% test coverage is not the goal. This is a perfect example, right? I have these classes which I extracted out during the refactoring steps, but I haven't written separate test for those. You don't need to do that, it is already covered. Your refactoring, whatever you try to do, is an additional task that you do. That doesn't mean you have to go and write a test for it. But if for some particular reason, if I am only making some behavioral change in, let's say, rounded button, if this rounded button is going to have some behavior apart from just rendering itself on the screen with some particular data here and there, then definitely I would go ahead and write a test, and write a test only for that part, right? Uh, before we move ahead, I just want to confirm whether you really did you get to really see how TDD can be done practically, or are there any questions? Meanwhile, I'll go to the browser. Yeah, I'm already on the browser. Yeah, and has the test finished? It's still running. It's creating an archive, and once it has created an Xcode archive, it should make the build available. And once that happens, I should get an email. Oh, okay. So Divya, what I did was, let me actually go back to Android Studio. So you can see the command that I have used below, right? Let me highlight it. Do you see the command that I have executed? So that actually helped me to extract the coverage from the file, the coverage file. Okay, is the stream paused? Am I back? Oh, cool, cool. Yes. So I am back again. Um, Let me, while this is going to finish, the build is going to finish soon. Let's also take a quick look at that. It's almost towards its last step. It's quickly going to do the export. It has exported. It is quickly going to deploy. Once it deploys to Bitrise, we should see around it. So it's a format in which the coverage data is exported. Divya. So it's simply a text file. So if you try and open it, where did yeah, it's actually a text file if you see, which talks in detail about which lines got covered, what's the coverage that you currently have. So for every line you get to see what's the data around it, and then eventually this will get processed by the tool, whichever one you are using, and it will present the information to you as an HTML. Yeah, it's uploading the artifacts. Let's wait. Sorry, is it not refreshed? Okay, it's finalizing artifact. Okay, yeah, I should get a new mail now. Yeah, there you go. As you can see, the new mail just arrived. Take a look at the time. It's almost, yeah, 6:45. This is the second build which is available now, right? And if I click on install, it will take me to a page from where I can download and install it, or I can even share it with anybody that I want. One thing we didn't definitely do today. This is just a simplistic way to look at a, CI, but we still did a lot. We had a CI that actually runs the test, and for iOS and Android, not just builds, but also in case of iOS, it also provisions it. So first, it uses a development provisional certificate, and provisions it for development purpose, and then exports it using the distribution certificate or distribution profile. Uh, there is still a lot that we need to do. So if you take a look in the version code, um, it stays as 1. We don't want that to happen, right? We want the version to upgrade on every build. Well, even that is possible. For Flutter, you can pass the argument, and you can pass an argument for the build number. So you can see it here. If you open a Android build, if you open the Android code, and if you go inside Gradle, you would generally see how it has been coded, right? It's take a look at this. It's version code, right? It's Flutter version code. Where does this Flutter version code come from? Flutter version code comes from the Flutter's parameter. So Flutter has a parameter that you can pass in. Where will you get the value to pass for it? Well, Bitrise gives you that. You can pass the Bitrise's build number as your version code, and that should be it. So you can see, like for example, let me actually go back to Bitrise. Let me go back to Bitrise. And what you see over here is like there is a build 4, right? So I can use this I can use this number as my version code. Any questions? The build should have actually finished by now. Let's see. And it should be successful. Yeah, it's successful. It took 12 minutes for the CI tool to build it for Android as well as iOS. Cool. So we actually wanted to give you an experience of pair programming as well. It was a little tricky for us because we wanted to run a Zoom session between me and Rajesh, and also stream this on YouTube. What we realized was something didn't go right. We had tested this before, but something didn't go right as we were connecting to the stream, and we were not able to stream the audio from Rajesh, due to which it caused some delay to start. We would we would definitely try and fix this issue and continue before our next session, because the idea was this was not just one part of it. This was just one way we thought we can give a quick introduction to how to do TDD, because that's really critical to considering the sessions that we are planning for future. The future session, just to give you all an idea, uh, includes a session on the various hypes that we generally hear. What is the generally known best practice for object oriented? Um, which architecture should we use? Or even if are they the right architecture, should we also use them? How can we make our code more maintainable to change, or how can we make our code more agile for any change in the requirement? All those factors come into place. We see a hype around people talking either in the favor of object oriented, or people talking either in favor of functional programming. There is always some truth in what they try to say, but there is also a lot of evangelism that goes around. We hear a lot about mutability versus immutability. So there is a lot of stuff that we see floating in the blogs or in various articles. Generally, we end up seeing just a blanket statements like, mutability is bad, side effects are bad, um, and that's not often right. At the end of the day, if you are developing a UI, the UI is mutable anyways. You do not literally create two different copies of the UI whenever something changes. It is still mutable. How do you? So the question around that. So if you are writing to a database, well, that's a mutable outcome of that, right? So how do we address that? When mutability becomes bad, when it could be a good thing. What about the functional programming or object-oriented ideas? we are definitely going to talk about those. That's one of the future sessions. So this essentially a series to make sure that we write how, is our attempt to share our experience of how to go about building better products, better applications, that don't take a lot of space on the disk, is safe enough, is agile enough to accommodate latest changes. Uh, cool. Angular. uh, Definitely, if there is a request, we can talk about Angular, but I would generally say why to even talk about frameworks, right? If we really want to so how do we generally go about thinking in terms of agile? Do we really start by thinking Angular, by thinking React? Isn't that a form of upfront design, right? So if what if you start with Angular and then eventually you realize that there is a problem? Like a lot of people know the most common issue which everyone faced, right, when shifting from Angular 1 to Angular 2. There used to be something called as kinetic JS before, and again there was a problem. Uh, then now we have a React. Is React good or not? It's not about a debate of really saying Angular is bad or React is good or vice versa. It's about knowing the principles